Today, we are going to tackle your modern burnout using a surprisingly potent 2,500-year-old solution, the ancient metaphysics of Taoism. Section 1. Dreaming of a butterfly. So to actually cure this burnout, we've got to first unstick our rigid ways of thinking by completely tossing ordinary reality right out the window. Just imagine waking up from a hyper-realistic dream, and suddenly you're struck with this deeply mysterious, totally destabilizing question about your own identity. Are you a human who just dreamt of being a butterfly? Or are you actually a butterfly currently dreaming you are a human? I know, it sounds like the plot of a modern sci-fi movie, but this exact question was posed thousands of years ago. This little thought experiment brilliantly illustrates the Taoist lesson that the boundaries between waking and dreaming, or even human and non-human, are totally fluid within the continuous transformation of the universe. Zhanzi, the philosopher who wrote this, was playfully mocking our human-centric obsession with boxing things into strict, rigid categories. He really wanted to show us that our egos, our fancy job titles, our unending daily schedules, they're all just temporary shapes in a much larger flowing reality. Section 2. Understanding the Eternal Tao. To really grasp what this universe is transforming inside of, we need to look at where this philosophy actually came from. This tradition stretches all the way from the Duke of Zhou over 3,000 years ago, straight through to modern ecological statements, that grounds these mystical parables in a very real, continuous history. It basically began as a reaction during the Warring States period. While other thinkers of the time were totally obsessed with social hierarchies and political control, early Taoists retreated from urban centers. They wanted to focus on a naturalist critique of all those stressful human-made constructs. The crucial takeaway here is that early Taoist thinkers completely shifted their focus away from those rigid social structures and instead looked to the cosmic Tao, or the natural way of things. And it's important to note, the Tao isn't a person or a deity, it's the process of reality itself. Think of it as the unnameable source from which all life emerges, and the underlying pattern that effortlessly governs the entire cosmos. But hey, we immediately hit a paradox right out of the gate. The opening line of the Dao De Jing deliberately makes this mysterious. It says, "A Tao that may be spoken is not the enduring Tao," meaning the moment you try to label it or force the eternal Tao into clumsy human words, you've already lost it. You simply can't capture it in a spreadsheet. You can't put it on your daily to-do list. The Tao demands that we let go of our obsessive need to completely define and control our environment. To really hammer home the danger of forcing things, the ancient texts tell this rather shocking story about a figure named Hundun, who basically represents primordial chaos. The story goes that well-intentioned rulers wanted to give Hundun eyes, ears, and a mouth so he could be, just like them. So they drilled one hole into him each day so he could see, hear, and eat like a normal person. But on the seventh day, completely overwhelmed by these artificial additions, Hundun died. It's a powerful, tragic narrative warning us that imposing artificial, human-centric structures onto perfectly integrated natural systems literally destroys their essential nature. Honestly, whenever you try to force a natural process to conform to an artificial deadline, you are essentially drilling holes into Hundun. So instead of forcing an artificial order, the universe naturally balances itself out through the complementary, interdependent struggle and harmony of yin and yang. Notice how these aren't opposing enemies at war with each other, they're partners. You literally cannot have the bright, active energy of yang without the dark, restful yield of yin. Modern burnout happens precisely because we try to live in a state of perpetual yang, always active, always producing, always on. Taoism reminds us that without the yin, the entire system just collapses. Section 3. The Art of Effortless Action. Let's bring this down to earth with a fascinating ancient parable that shows us exactly how to apply this balance in the physical world. When butchering an ox, the legendary cook Ding doesn't just hack away with brute force. Instead, he stops looking with his eyes and lets his spirit guide his unblunted knife right through the natural gaps. He tells his lord that an average cook ruins his knife in a month by hacking at bones. But Cook Ding's blade, it remains perfectly sharp after years of use, all because he simply finds the empty spaces in the joints and lets the blade glide right through. He just follows the natural grain. This vivid, incredibly precise physical action perfectly illustrates the abstract concept of Wu Wei. It roughly translates to effortless action or non-action. Now, to be clear, it is not about being lazy or passive. It's about acting with maximum effect through minimum intervention. Just like Cookding's knife, or like water steadily wearing away a massive stone, you don't push against the obstacle, you flow around it. Section 4. Nature, ecology, and harmony. Now, let's scale this philosophy up from the butcher's block to the entire macro level of our planet. Because Taoism isn't just about finding your own individual peace. It's deeply tied to how we treat the earth itself. The 2003 Taoist faith statement on the environment explicitly states that humanity absolutely shouldn't dominate the earth, but rather assist everything in growing according to its own natural way. This perfectly aligns with Chapter 25 of the Dao De Jing. We are not separate from nature. We are literally continuous with it. When we harm the environment, we are directly harming ourselves because we're part of the exact same organic living entity. And this isn't just dusty ancient theory either. Modern Taoists have actively put this into practice by building a chain of over 200 ecological temples that actively conserve rare plant species and protect local environments. They recognize a fundamental truth. To cultivate your own internal, spiritual, and physical health, you have to have a clean, unpolluted external environment. They advocate for something called restrained intervention. That basically means we should use our modern tools and technology to assist nature's incredible self-regulating capacity, rather than aggressively exploiting it. It's essentially the ecological version of Wu Wei. We don't have to reject technology entirely, but we should use it gently, as an auxiliary helper to the natural world, striking a perfect balance between conservation and development. Section 5. Taoism in Modern Life. All right, so how do we actually bridge these texts from the 4th century BCE directly to your incredibly chaotic 21st century stressors? How do we take this profound cosmic view and use it to stop feeling so absolutely drained by Friday afternoon? Well, first, you have to return to the concept of Pa, or the uncarved block. This means embracing a radical simplicity to clear out the clutter from both your physical space and your overloaded mind. Think of yourself as that raw, uncarved block of wood before society came along and chiseled you into a stressed-out employee, an endless consumer, a frantic multitasker. Stripping away those artificial layers brings you right back to your original, natural state of peace. When you look at modern hustle culture right next to Taoist flow, it's literally night and day. One leaves you completely burnt out from constantly forcing outcomes and juggling way too many screens, while the other actually gives you back your energy through focused, effortless action. Modern culture tells you to dominate and exploit. Taoism quietly invites you to assist and yield. So you can actually start applying this today. Try tracking your own natural energy patterns, your internal yin and yang. You can firmly reduce your digital consumption to protect your mind from that constant external stimulation. Maybe try practicing Zhu Wang, which is a form of sitting and forgetting, where you simply let go of all analytical thoughts and social identities for just a few minutes. And very importantly, take the time to engage in slow, mindful, single tasking to let your nervous system finally calm down. Don't force your work. Find the natural gaps in the joints, just like Cookding. I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with an ancient story about a gnarled old oak tree. It was massive, totally twisted, and entirely full of knots. A master carpenter walked right past it, calling it worthless timber. But later that night, the tree appeared to the carpenter in a dream. It explained to him that all the so-called useful trees, the fruit trees and the perfectly straight pines, were chopped down and broken in their prime, precisely because society found them useful. The oak tree survived its entire natural lifespan because it had mastered the art of being useless. It asks you to consider a pretty wild idea. What if finding your own uselessness, meaning stepping away from the relentless demand to always be productive for the modern machine, might just be the ultimate secret to a long, flowing, and peaceful life? Are you exhausting yourself trying to be carved into something you're fundamentally not? Or are you ready to just be the uncarved block?